These 4 examples require factoring by difference of squares. So first of all, if I look at the expanded form, if it's difference of squares, there's always 2 terms. There's always a minus sign in between the terms, and you could take the square root of both of the terms. So the factored form always has double parentheses. One sign is a plus sign that separates the binomial, and the other sign is a minus sign that separates the binomial in the parentheses. So what goes in the very front spots here? Well, you look at the very first term, which is 4x squared, and you take the square root of that. Or in other words, what can you multiply by itself to get 4x squared? And that would be 2x times 2x. I erased my minus sign. There we go. And then what goes in the back spots here? Well, you look at the back term and you take the square root of that. So in other words, what can you multiply by itself to get 9? And that would be 3 and 3. So my 2 factors would be 2x plus 3 and 2x minus 3. And don't forget, you could always check your factored form by distributing. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. Distribute the 3 to both terms. 3x times 2x is 6x. And 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. My middle terms will cancel out here because they're opposite signs, so I do get 4x squared minus 9. So that's a way to check your answer there. All right, so for the second expanded form here, I notice that there's 2 terms, there's a minus sign in between them, and I could take the square root of both of those terms. So I open up double parentheses, alternate my signs. So what goes in the front spots here, you take the square root of this first term. In other words, what do you multiply by itself to get 49x to the 4th? Well, 7 times 7 is 49, and then x squared times x squared gets me x to the 4th. And then what goes in the back spots here, again, you look at the back term and you take the square root of that, or you say, what can I multiply by itself to get 16y to the 2nd? That would be 4y times 4y. For this third one, again, this expanded form has 2 terms. I could take the square root of both terms, and there's definitely a minus sign in between them, so I could set up my double parentheses with alternating signs. So in the front spots here, I take the square root of this first term. What do I multiply by itself to get a squared? And that would be a times a. And then the back spots here, I take the square root of the back term, which is 169. So the square root of 169 is 13. So this would be 13s here. Then lastly, number 4, it's asking you, what is the value of b that would make this completely factored? So if I plug in, starting with 81, if I plug in 81, I could factor this still because 81 is a perfect square, and so is the x squared. So this would actually factor as x plus 9, x minus 9. So 81 would make it factorable. What about 121? If I plug in 121, again, 121 is a perfect square, so this would be factored by difference of squares. So that's out. If I plug in 4, 4 is also a perfect square, so again, I could factor that by difference of squares. So looking at the last choice, 15 is not a perfect square, so this is completely factored.